Now, let's try to understand some of the non-price related competition decisions which are taken by the various firms in an oligopolistic market. The major items that we look at are with respect to marketing. We'll see that there is a product differentiation that is typically being taken up by the firms, and at the same time we also experience to some extent an advertising related competition. So we'll try to focus on these aspects. So whenever we talk about a product differentiation, what is that we are looking at? To what extent I'm able to distinguish the product from that of the rivals? What is that my product brings in, which I can clearly tell that it is more different from that of the competitors, and it can also help me in terms of charging a price or a premium for that additional feature. So this is where we are looking at, okay, a few dimensions from which a companies can typically look at that aspect. Okay, is our product's technology much greater compared to that of the rivals, like probably the Honda's engine? Can I boast of that my engine is much effective compared to that of the rivals? Can I talk more in terms of durability, extended warranties, something like that? How much is reliable is my particular product is? So styling, features, are there any unique that are associated with my product? And no two products which are advertised, they will be exactly be the same. If they are exactly the same, obviously their price should be the same. I can't charge higher. So they should not be homogeneous, which means I should bring in some difference into that product. Yeah, or in some cases, I can even come out with some kind of guarantees, warranties, after sales service. All these things, or some of these things, some subset of these things can very well be packaged as a differentiation of the product. Now, this is where we talk about two major forms of differentiation, one being the vertical, the other is the horizontal. Whenever we talk about a vertical differentiation, the differentiation is purely on the grounds of quality, right? I differentiate two products purely. Okay, this is a local made, this is a branded. And in the branded, we talk about a few elements which add more and more quality to the product. So it is purely resulting in that particular product being costing more because of so much of quality that I am building into that product, and that's the reason the price of it is much more. So it's as good as doing a promotion that our quality is the best, and probably you may have to pay a little bit of premium for the same. Whereas on the other side, I can look at a situation of horizontal differentiation where the focus is on differing tastes, but more or less the cost of production is the same. I am targeting a different customer base altogether. I am targeting the other dimension of the customer taste. So trying to provide in the same range, in the same cost, probably some other product meeting some other needs of the customer. So the differentiation could be done on any of these two grounds. And whenever we use the word market segmentation, it's primarily identifying the market, dividing the market, trying to understand different subsets of the customers, and trying to fit in which product or which features of the product will fit into what kind of customers. And if at all I am not able to fit in any specific product class to a particular set of customers, we call that particular market as a very niche market. Existing product not met, and I have to do some kind of a customized design of the product for that particular customer base, we are calling that as a niche market. Then, how does marketing play a role? How do these oligopolistic firms really create a difference in terms of marketing? First of all, what is marketing? Though there is no standard definition, no one liner definition of marketing. So, probably it consists of all these things. Understand what the market really wants. What are the different kinds of customers? What are their requirements? Investigate their demand. And based on that, identify what products do I require. Is it one? Is it a range? And once you design and develop a product, make sure that you are able to convince your customers to purchase that kind of a product. Now, if we see, the whole marketing dimension is the strategy. The four major strategies with respect to marketing rely on two important dimensions. One is on the product, two is the markets. Probably you look at market is either a new geography or a new customer base. Probably look at it as a new customer base, whether it is in the same geography with a different set of customers or a different geography altogether. That is what we call as market. And product is something which is an existing or a new. Now this is where the four strategies come: old product, old market, existing market, old product, or probably let me not use the word old, existing product, existing market, existing product, new market, new product, existing market, new product, new market. Probably this is the most riskiest kind of scenario because I'm taking the new product to the new customer base altogether. Whereas this looks to be the most safest kind of a strategy, least risky kind of a strategy because I'm trying to sell the existing product to the existing customer base itself. Now these are the four names that go. Market penetration is a kind of a strategy where I target an existing product to an existing market, right? The least risky. But if more and more players come in, if the competition increases in that scope, if I'm not expanding either in terms of products or in terms of market, then my profitability and my growth is getting very much hampered. Whereas the other world is, to the current market itself, I go with a new product. I enhance the product or I create a totally new product and take it to the existing customer base itself. And that is what we are calling as a product differentiation. I'm trying to bring in some kind of differentiation. Nowadays, we see a toothpaste ad comes up with, does your toothpaste contain some salt in it? Now, if I look at it till date, there are so many toothpastes that were developed, designed, introduced to various markets, but never ever they have come out with the concept of a salt in a toothpaste. It might be there, it might not be there, but it was not heavily advertised at all. But if you look at it now, probably that particular concept has been promoted, which means to the same customer base, they are taking a new product with a new set of features so that it can be treated as a differentiation in the product. So that's one strategy which the company can look at, or it can target the same product, it can take it to a new geography altogether or to a new customer base. It could be the same a new physical location or a different segment. Probably earlier a soap X was targeted primarily, let's say, towards women. Now, using a different promotion campaign, the same soap X can be targeted towards men or towards kids, saying that there is something which can be beneficial to the kids as well using that particular brand of soap. Which means I'm not moving to a new geography, but I'm trying to pitch the same product to the new set of customers altogether. And finally, I could look at a diversification strategy where I'm completely moving to a new market with a new product so that it's probably it can act as a diversification. Even if one market, one product fails, another market, another product is going to give me the expected revenue. Though it's a kind of a risky proposition, but that is how the overall portfolio of the company can get diversified. So, on a traditional note, any marketing means choosing one of these four strategies, and for these four strategies, coming up, one of these four strategies, coming out with an appropriate plan and implementing the plan. So, whenever we talk about the marketing, the first thing that comes to our mind is the marketing mix. How do I choose the mix? And for that, the broad guidelines are the four P's of marketing. Very common thing in any marketing subject: the product, price, place, and promotion. So whenever I have to talk about what features I have to design with respect to product, few things I always keep brainstorming. What is the quality that we are looking at? How do I brand the product? What is the packaging that I do to the product? What is the kind of after sale service? What is the warranty guarantees that are offered with respect to product? So I have to design decently all these aspects with respect to the product, and there should be some kind of a differentiation with respect to my competitors or rivals products. Similarly, the price. How much should I set the price? What are my competitors' prices? Should I set it above that or below that, and by what percentage? Do I need to give some kind of credit to my customers or to my wholesalers? What should be the kind of credit terms or any kind of discounts? What should be the discounting criteria? Should it be some festival based or occasion based discount, or should it be volume based discount? And if at all any kind of discounting plans are to be coming out, what should be the criteria based on them? A thorough study and positioning has to happen. Similarly, place. How do you get it sold? Is it sold through supermarkets? Is it sold through mom and pop stores? Or is it sold directly door to door? What is the kind, where it is, how it is sold? What is the warehousing strategy for it? And how does the logistics really work? Are we going to take care of the logistics, or are we outsourcing the logistics? How are we handling the place part? And finally, what is the advertising strategy for the same? Do we go for television? If so, what kind of channels and what kind of time slots? Do I have to give some kind of special offers to my customers? So all these things are the different dimensions of marketing that come into picture, and we have to make sure that we are very consistent and appropriate. Probably I cannot focus more and more on the price today, and suddenly within no time I scrap the price strategy and then get into the promotion strategy. Across all these four, I have to be more and more consistent. And let's try to understand all these four are interdependent, which means an integrated analysis of the same has to be thoroughly performed before trying to come up with some kind of brochure regarding the same. And all these things, what numbers I have to set, what strategy I have to design, it's purely depending on the elasticity of the product demand to each factor and at what stage in the life cycle the product is. And finally, coming to the role of advertising, we all need to appreciate that it is very sensitive to the state of the economy. Because if we see, when the market is really booming, during an expansionary phase, when the GDP is really high, companies do aggressive advertising. They spend heavily on advertising when the markets are up. They sponsor lots and lots of events when the economy is doing good. The profits are really growing. But in a recessionary kind of an economy, they directly cut down all their advertising expenses. You hardly see their presence in television channels and all. So we have to really understand the advertising budget of a company is more and more in line with the state of the economy. And for understanding that, we always try to compute what is called as an advertising to sales ratio, which talks about the total money that is spent on advertising in a particular year divided by the total sales that got generated during that year. So for every $1 of for every $1 of the revenue that the company has got on selling its products, how many pennies have been spent on the advertising, right? The higher it is, probably it may not be beneficial for the customer, because at the end of the day that expense is also going as a part of the pricing of the product. So this ratio will talk about to what extent the company is focusing more on advertising. Probably between the products, between the industries, this differs completely. And one few important items that come out: market structure. If I think about, in a any perfectly competitive company never advertises. Or you look at any monopoly, very rarely there is any kind of advertising. You look at monopolistic competition, yes, to very some extent you find advertising, but the oligopoly markets, the companies which are operating in oligopolistic markets, we see they have to spend very heavily on advertising. So depending on the market structure, I can very well see what would be the traditional advertising budget of the company. Then I also have to look at the product characteristics. If at all I am launching a new product, yes, the chance that the advertising budget for the same is very high. And at the same time, probably if a particular good, if a particular product requires huge spending from the customer, it forms a significant expenditure from the customer. It's better that they can very well appreciate the differentiation between the products, like a bike or any kind of consumer durables or laptops or televisions, right? Any of these which require really significant investment from the customer, they require a good amount of advertising, so that all their features can very well be communicated to the customer, so that the customer can take a very informed decision for the same. And probably the customer can create some kind of loyalty or some kind of an initial impression with respect to the product. And sometimes it also act as making the consumers recollect the product again and again. And wherever you have a constantly changing customer base, probably schools or coaching institutes, right? Probably if I'm talking about schools, new students keep coming every year. Any kind of training institutes, the same customer may not come again and again. So I have to get new set of customers, which means it requires a constant advertising budget. So advertising is something which is required for some kind of businesses, some kind of products. So we need to have an understanding what kind of business, what kind of products really require a good amount of advertising to be done. And the main intention of an advertising, probably from an economic standpoint, right? If this is my demand curve, this is my supply curve, generally the expectation is any advertising is expected to push the demand curve, shift the demand curve to the right, which is like, okay, initially there would be this is, if at all there was no advertising, let's say this is the equilibrium quantity and this is the equilibrium price. And at the same time, now with this, I could see that more quantity is expected to be sold, and people don't even mind paying slightly higher price, because they start developing some kind of a brand loyalty. And because of that advertising, the recollectability of that particular product actually increases, which means whatever are the substitutes for it, people may not recollect the substitutes. So Advertising is making the demand for that particular product less and less price elastic. So people, it is making them stick to the product. It's making them recollect only that particular brand and not the competitor's brand. So the substitutes are getting really forgotten. So that is what is anticipated and expected out of the advertising, which means the quantity that would be sold, the companies really feel that they are going to sell more in the short term as well as in the long term, which will definitely add up to their market share, which will help them in even increasing the price. Because once a product is advertised, people really feel that the quality of that product is much, much higher. So, overall, from a company's perspective, compared to whatever they have spent on advertising, they really feel that their revenues are traditionally going up, which is again adding up to their profits quite comfortably. And just to summarize, what kind of advantages and disadvantages that are brought in by advertising? From an advantage perspective, I could see information. Advertising definitely provides information to the consumers. They can take informed decisions regarding what product to purchase, how it suits to their requirement. So there is a positive aspect in it. And this advertising, it helps in terms of making sure that even the new products that the companies have introduced, they get communicated, and even the new firms that are coming up, they can communicate their products quite comfortably to the customers. And the detailed emphasis on the features of the product can very well be done. And because I know what all my competitors are advertising on, what are the strategies of my competitors, probably the pricing becomes more and more competitive, right? Some kind of negotiations by the customers can happen or based on the competitors products as well. And overall, the sales is going to increase because lots of people are becoming aware of that particular product. So the production can increase drastically, which is leading to the economies of scale. So there are so many positives of the advertising, but at the same time, probably misleading information also could come out. The items that are present in red, I'm looking at the negative side effects that can come out of this advertising. The decision of the customer gets completely distorted because in some advertisements you could see wrong information, imperfect information could be communicated with small asterisk in very small font being written at the bottom of the ad. But some people may get completely mistaken, some misled, which can result in terms of buying those kind of products, and which can make them persuade or compelled to buy a very inferior product which is very well advertised. And at the same time, you see, okay, because something is advertised in such a way, last 3 days, hurry up. Offer lasts for last 3 days only. We are giving a 50% discount on a particular product. The offer is just for the last 2 days, just for the last 1 day. In this case, it is sometimes making someone who has really planned the purchase of that particular product probably 6 months later to react to it immediately, which means it is creating a scenario where the wants are getting enhanced, something which a person might not have thought of buying because of this advertising mechanism. He may feel like, oh, because of the so much of price cut that is happening today, why not I go ahead and buy it? So the scarcity is actually increasing quite drastically. And advertising is a huge cost. With the media, different kinds of media charges going up, the advertising costs are going up, which means from the company's standpoint they have to increase the price of the product, so the burden is completely coming onto the consumers in because of the higher advertising costs. And the more and more I advertise, probably I'm creating a barrier to the new firms to enter into the market. Brand loyalty gets established. People may not be able to recollect A new company that has come, unless it spends very heavily on the advertising, unless a new company starts the advertising with a bang, it cannot make some kind of impression in the market, and it creates so many unwanted side effects for the society. So though there are some positives of advertising, but if the same is not done in a very effective and consumer friendly kind of a manner, it can create so much. If extensive advertising is done, it can push up the cost and prices of the product and act as a disadvantage to the consumers. That is what we see in many developed countries, especially when many competitors are operating in the business. All right. So, a good understanding of these non price related competitions which exist across the various firms need to be understood so that appropriate decision can be taken. All right.